family betrayal cuts deeper than any stranger's cruelty. And the day my son threw me out of my own house, I learned that blood doesn't always mean loyalty. Standing on my front porch in my Sunday best, watching my only child toss a trash bag of my clothes at my feet like I was garbage, that moment rewired everything I thought I knew about love, sacrifice, and the child I raised alone for 40 years. My name is Miss Laverne, and this is the story of how my son called me a burden, kicked me out with nothing but the clothes on my back, and told me to go wherever you want. He thought I was weak. He thought I was helpless. He thought that house was his future. But what he didn't know could fill a courthouse. See, when you raise a child alone, you give them everything. You work yourself to the bone. You pray over them when they're sleeping. You sacrifice dates, vacations, new clothes, peace of mind, all of it, just so they can have a shot at something better than what you had. And you do it gladly because that's what love looks like when it's real. But love without respect, that's just a doormat with a heartbeat. The morning Darren and his wife Shanice told me to pack my things and leave, I felt something crack inside my chest that no amount of prayer could immediately heal. Not my heart breaking, no, that came later. What I felt in that moment was shock so deep, it turned my legs to water. Because the boy I rocked to sleep, the boy I fed when his father abandoned us, the boy I worked 3 jobs to put through school, that boy looked at me like I was a stranger inconvenience in his life. And his wife? She stood there with her arms folded, lips tight, eyes cold, like she'd been waiting for this moment for months. "We need our space," Darren said, his voice flat and rehearsed, like he'd practiced it in the mirror. "You'll figure something out." No apology, no guilt, no hesitation. Just a trash bag. And the door closing behind me. I want you to pause right here and think about something. Have you ever trusted someone so completely that the idea of them hurting you seemed impossible? Have you ever sacrificed so much for someone that you assumed loyalty was automatic? Because that's where I was, and that's why the betrayal hit like a freight train I never saw coming. If you've ever felt thrown away by the people you loved most, then you already know the weight sitting on my chest that day. And if you haven't, stay with me, because what happened next will show you exactly what happens when a mother's patience runs out and karma starts keeping receipts. Before we continue, I need you to do something for me. Hit that like button if you believe parents deserve respect. Drop a comment telling me where you're watching from and what time it is where you are right now. And subscribe, because this story has twists you won't see coming, and I promise you'll want to hear how this ends. Also, download your ebook titled Suspense and Thriller Stories by clicking the link in the pinned comment. Now let me take you back to the beginning, because to understand how deep this betrayal cut, you need to know what I gave up to build the life my son tried to steal from me. I was 23 when I had Darren. Young, hopeful, and married to a man who promised me forever, but barely made it through 3 years. Raymond left on a Tuesday morning while Darren was still in diapers, said he needed to find himself, and never came back. No child support, no phone calls, just gone. So it was me and my baby boy against the world. I worked as a nurse's aide at a rehabilitation center in Baltimore, pulling double shifts when they let me, cleaning bedpans and helping elderly patients who reminded me of my own grandmother. The work was hard, the pay was low, but it was honest. And every 2 weeks when that check hit my account, I'd split it 3 ways: rent, food, and Darren's future. On weekends, I braided hair in my tiny kitchen for $20 a head. I'd sit women down in my folding chair, grease their scalps, and weave cornrows so tight they'd last a month. My fingers ached, my back screamed, but that extra money meant Darren could have new sneakers for school or a warm coat for winter. I never bought myself anything unless it was on clearance, and even then, only if I absolutely needed it. My clothes came from thrift stores, my furniture came from yard sales. My joy came from watching my son smile when I surprised him with a toy I'd saved up for or a meal he loved. that boy was my heartbeat, my reason for waking up, my reason for pushing through exhaustion that felt like it lived in my bones. When Darren turned 16, he started pulling away the way teenagers do. But I told myself it was normal. Boys need space to become men. So I gave him room. I trusted him. I believed the values I'd poured into him would stick. He wasn't a bad kid. He just wasn't a grateful one. And maybe that was my fault. Maybe I loved him so much, I forgot to teach him how to love me back. By the time he turned 18, I'd saved enough to help him enroll in community college. He didn't have the grades for a scholarship, but I didn't care. I worked overtime, picked up extra shifts, skipped meals so he wouldn't have to take out loans. "Mama, you don't have to do all this," he'd say, barely looking up from his phone. But I did, because that's what mothers do. We give until there's nothing left, and then we find something else to give. I thought he'd remember that. I thought when he grew up, when he had his own life, he'd look back and understand the weight of what I carried for him. I was wrong. When Darren met Shanice during his second year of college, I knew something was off. She was pretty, sure, with sharp features and a smile that never quite reached her eyes. She was polite enough in front of me, but I felt the chill beneath it. The way she'd glance at my worn-out furniture, the way she'd wrinkle her nose when I cooked my usual meals. "She just needs time to warm up to you, Mama," Darren said when I mentioned it. But mothers have instincts, and mine was screaming. They got married 6 months later. I wasn't thrilled, but I showed up. I wore my best dress, smiled in the photos, and prayed over their union. I even gave them $2,000 I'd been saving for a new roof because they said they needed it for their honeymoon. They never went on that honeymoon, but my roof still leaks. The house I live in, the house Darren tried to take from me, is more than walls and a roof. It's my legacy. My proofs that a single Black woman from East Baltimore with nothing but grit and faith could build something solid. I bought it when I was 42 years old. Took me nearly 20 years to save enough for the down payment. 20 years of sacrifice, side hustles, and saying no to anything that wasn't a necessity. The day I signed those papers, I cried in the realtor's office. Not sad tears, grateful tears, because that house meant freedom. It meant stability. It meant my son would have a place to come home to, a foundation to build his own dreams on. It's a small brick row house on a quiet street where neighbors still say good morning and look out for each other. 3 bedrooms, 1 bathroom, a kitchen with yellow countertops I always meant to update but never got around to. The living room has a big window that lets in sunlight every morning, and I'd sit there with my coffee, thanking God for blessing me with a space to call mine. Every corner of that house holds a memory. The bedroom where Darren grew up, where I'd read him bedtime stories and tuck him in. The kitchen where I taught him how to make my grandmother's mac and cheese. The porch where we'd sit in summer evenings talking about his dreams while fireflies danced in the yard. I painted every wall myself. I fixed leaky faucets with YouTube tutorials. I planted flowers in the front yard every spring because I wanted my home to feel alive. When the neighborhood started changing, new coffee shops, young families moving in, property values climbing, realtors started knocking on doors with offers. Some of my neighbors sold and moved to cheaper areas, but not me. "Miss Laverne, you could make a nice profit," one realtor said, standing on my porch with his briefcase and his slick smile. "Baby, this house ain't for sale. My sweat and prayers are in these walls. You can't put a price on that." He didn't understand, but I didn't need him to. What I didn't tell him, what I didn't tell anyone except my niece Charmaine, was that I had quietly transferred partial ownership of the house to her name a few years earlier. She worked in real estate and convinced me to protect my assets in case anything ever happened to me. "Auntie, you never know.
Predatory lenders, medical bills, anything could come for your house. Let's make sure it stays in the family. I agreed because Charmaine was smart and I trusted her. I never imagined I'd need that protection from my own son. But God knew. Even when I didn't, God knew.
Darren lost his job about a year after he and Shanice got married. He worked at a warehouse, nothing fancy, but it paid the bills. When the company downsized, he was one of the first to go. "Mama, can we stay with you for a little while?" he asked over the phone, "just until I get back on my feet." Of course I said yes. What kind of mother turns away her child when they're struggling? They moved in a week later with more boxes than I expected and an attitude I didn't. Shanice barely helped unpack. She walked through my house like she was inspecting a hotel room, running her finger along surfaces, making little comments. "It's cozy," she said, which I knew meant small. "We'll make it work," Darren added quickly, shooting her a look. I told them they didn't need to pay rent. I only asked that they help with groceries and utilities. Seemed fair enough. For the first month, things were fine. Darren looked for work. Shanice stayed home, scrolling on her phone most of the day. I kept my mouth shut and my door open. But then I started noticing things. Bills I'd left on the counter would disappear and reappear in different spots. Groceries I'd just bought would vanish faster than 3 people could eat them. My toiletries, my cleaning supplies, even my good lotion, gone. I didn't say anything at first. I told myself I was being paranoid. Maybe I forgot where I put things. Maybe I ate more than I realized. But then I overheard them talking. It was late on a Thursday night. I'd gone to the kitchen for some water and heard their voices coming from the guest room. I shouldn't have stopped to listen, but something in Shanice's tone made me freeze. "She's holding us back," she said, her voice sharp and low. "We could sell this place. The neighborhood's gentrifying. We'd make a killing." "She's not going to sell. You know how she is about this house." "So we wait. She won't live forever, and when she's gone, we won't have to deal with her outdated furniture and her church friends dropping by unannounced." My hand shook so hard I almost dropped my glass. "She's holding us back," Shanice continued. "You know that, right? We could be in our own spot right now if you just stand up to her." And then my son, my baby boy, said the words that shattered me. "You're right. She's holding us back." I stood in that dark hallway, tears streaming down my face, trying to keep my breathing quiet so they wouldn't hear me. I felt like someone had reached into my chest and squeezed my heart until it stopped. He didn't defend me. He didn't tell her to stop. He agreed. I went back to my room, climbed into bed, and cried into my pillow until I couldn't cry anymore. I prayed for understanding. I prayed for strength. I prayed for God to show me what to do. But I didn't confront them, not yet, because part of me still hoped I'd misheard. Part of me still wanted to believe my son loved me more than he loved convenience. Over the next few weeks, things got worse. Shanice stopped even pretending to be polite. She'd sigh loudly when I was in the kitchen. She'd turn up the TV when I was on a phone call. She'd complain to Darren in a voice loud enough for me to hear. "Your mother is always in the way. Your mother acts like this is still her house." It was my house, but I was starting to feel like a guest, an unwanted guest. And Darren? He said nothing. He just nodded along, avoiding my eyes, slipping further and further away from the boy I raised. I started staying in my room more, eating my meals alone, keeping to myself. I felt like a stranger in the home I'd worked my whole life to build. And that's when I knew. Deep in my gut, I knew something bad was coming. I just didn't know how soon. It happened on a Sunday morning in late September. I remember because the leaves were just starting to turn and I'd worn my favorite lavender dress to church. I felt good that morning, peaceful, like maybe things would get better. I should have known better than to trust peace that comes too easy. When I got home, Shanice was standing in the living room with her arms folded across her chest. Darren stood beside her, staring at the floor like a child caught stealing. "We need to talk," Shanice said. I set my purse down on the table. "About what?" "About you moving out." The words hit me like a slap. I looked at Darren, waiting for him to tell her she was out of line, waiting for him to defend me. He said nothing. "Excuse me?" I managed to say, my voice shaking. "Darren and I need our space," Shanice continued, her tone flat and emotionless. "We're trying to build a life together, and frankly, having you here is making that difficult." "This is my house," I said slowly, trying to keep my voice steady. "I opened my door to you when you had nowhere else to go." "And we appreciate that," Darren finally spoke, but he still wouldn't look at me. "But it's time for you to find your own place." My legs felt weak. "My own place? Darren, this is my home. I've lived here for over 20 years. "You'll figure something out," Shanice said with a shrug. "You've got your Social Security check. That should be enough to rent a room somewhere." A room. She wanted me to rent a room with my Social Security check while they lived in the house I built. I turned to my son, my voice breaking. "Darren, please, tell me you're not serious." He finally looked up, and what I saw in his eyes broke me. There was no guilt, no hesitation, just cold determination. "Mom, we've made up our minds. You need to leave." "Where am I supposed to go?" I asked, tears streaming down my face now. "Wherever you want," he said. "You're resourceful. You'll be fine." Shanice walked over to the couch and picked up a trash bag. She tossed it at my feet like I was garbage being taken out. "I packed some of your things," she said. "You can come back for the rest later." I stood there, frozen, staring at that trash bag. Inside were some of my clothes, my toothbrush, my Bible. My entire life reduced to items stuffed in a trash bag by a woman who never loved me. "This is really happening?" I whispered, more to myself than to them. "Mom, don't make this harder than it needs to be," Darren said. "Don't make this harder." I wanted to scream. I wanted to collapse. I wanted to shake him and ask where the boy I raised had gone. But I didn't do any of that. Instead, I picked up that trash bag, grabbed my purse, and walked toward the door. At the threshold, I turned back one last time. "I gave you everything. Everything I had, I gave to you." Darren looked away. Shanice stared at me with cold, empty eyes. "One day," I said quietly, "you'll understand what you've done." I walked out of my house, my home, and the door closed behind me with a sound that echoed like a gunshot. I stood on the porch in my lavender dress and my Sunday shoes, holding a trash bag of my belongings, and felt shame burn through me hotter than anger. Neighbors were outside. I saw curtains move. I heard whispers. Mrs. Patterson from next door came rushing over. "Laverne? What's going on?" I couldn't speak. If I opened my mouth, I'd fall apart right there on the sidewalk. "I'm fine," I lied, my voice barely above a whisper. "I'm fine." But I wasn't fine. I was shattered, humiliated, homeless. And the worst part? I still loved him. Even after everything, I still loved my son. That's what makes betrayal so devastating. It's not the hate that destroys you. It's the love you can't turn off no matter how much it hurts. I ended up at Miss Geraldine's house 3 blocks away. She's been my church sister for 15 years, the kind of friend who doesn't need explanations, just shows up with open arms and hot food. When she opened her door and saw me standing there with that trash bag, tears dried on my face and shame weighing down my shoulders. She didn't ask questions. She just pulled me inside and held me while I broke down completely. "Let it out, baby," she whispered, rubbing my back. "Let it all out." I cried until my throat was raw and my eyes were swollen. I cried for the little boy I used to rock to sleep. I cried for the years I sacrificed. I cried for the trust I'd given so freely and had thrown back in my face. And I cried because somewhere along the way, I'd failed to teach my son that love isn't something you discard when it becomes inconvenient. Geraldine made me chamomile tea and sat with me at her kitchen table. She didn't offer solutions or tell me what I should have done differently. She just listened. "I don't understand," I finally said, my voice hoarse. "I gave him everything. How does a child do this to their mother?" "Some people forget where they came from the minute they think they've arrived somewhere new," Geraldine said softly. "But God sees everything, Laverne. Every sacrifice you made, every tear you cried, every prayer you prayed over that boy. God keeps records." I wanted to believe her, but in that moment, I felt like God had forgotten about me too. The first few days were the hardest. I'd wake up in Geraldine's guest room and forget where I was. Then reality would crash over me like cold water and I'd have to relive the humiliation all over again. I couldn't eat. Food tasted like sand. Geraldine would make my favorite meals and I'd push them around my plate, managing only a few bites before my stomach turned. I stopped answering my phone. People from church kept calling, asking if I was okay, offering help. But I couldn't bear to tell the story over and over, couldn't bear the pity in their voices. One evening, I walked past my old house. I don't know why I did it. Maybe I thought seeing it would help. Maybe I was torturing myself. The lights were on inside. Through the window, I could see Shanice on my couch, laughing at something on TV, living her life in my space like I never existed. My chest tightened so hard I thought I was having a heart attack. I stood there on the sidewalk, staring at the home I'd built with my bare hands and my stubborn faith, now occupied by people who saw me as nothing more than an obstacle. Mrs. Patterson spotted me from her porch. "Laverne, honey, come sit with me." I crossed the street and sank into a porch chair, exhausted from carrying grief that felt heavier than my body. "I've been watching them," she said quietly. "Your son barely leaves the house. That wife of his, she goes out every day in different outfits, hair done, nails done. Meanwhile, you're the one suffering." Maybe I deserved it somehow. Maybe I babied him too much. Maybe— "Stop that right now," Mrs. Patterson cut me off firmly. "You were a good mother, a great mother. What he did has nothing to do with what you did or didn't do. That's his character, not your failure." Her words helped, but they didn't heal. That night back at Geraldine's, I knelt beside the bed and prayed harder than I ever prayed in my life. I prayed for understanding. I prayed for peace. I prayed for God to show me what to do next because I couldn't see a way forward. And somewhere in that prayer, between the tears and the pleading, something shifted. Not everything, but something. I realized I had two choices: let this destroy me completely or find a way to survive it. Survival felt impossible, but destruction felt worse. 3 days later, my niece Charmaine showed up at Geraldine's door, her face tight with anger. "Auntie, I heard what happened," she said, pulling me into a hug. "Why didn't you call me sooner?" "I didn't want to burden anyone else," I admitted. "Burden?" She pulled back and looked at me like I'd lost my mind. "You're not a burden. You're family. And what Darren did is unforgivable." We sat down in Geraldine's living room, and Charmaine called out her tablet. "Do you remember when we transferred partial ownership of the house to my name?" I nodded slowly. "You said it would protect me." "It did," she said, her eyes sharp. "Which means Darren can't do a damn thing with that property without both of our signatures. And Auntie, I'm not signing anything." My heart started pounding. "What does that mean?" "It means legally, he's living in a house he doesn't fully own. And since you're still a co-owner, we can start eviction proceedings if you want to." Eviction? The word felt foreign in my mouth. Evicting my own son from my own house. "I don't know if I can do that," I said weakly. Charmaine took my hand. "Auntie, he threw you out with a trash bag. He didn't give you a second thought. Now, I'm not saying you have to be cruel, but you do have to protect yourself.
He needs to face consequences. I sat there torn between the mother who still wanted to protect her child and the woman who was tired of being treated like she didn't matter. "Let me think about it," I said. "Don't think too long," Charmaine warned. "The longer they stay, the harder it'll be to remove them. And trust me, once Shanice finds out she doesn't have the control she thinks she has, things will get ugly." That night, I barely slept. I kept replaying every moment, every sacrifice, every time I chose Darren over myself, and I realized something painful but true. Love without boundaries isn't love. It's self-destruction. By morning, I'd made my decision. "Do it," I told Charmaine when she called. "Start the eviction process." There was a pause on the other end. "Are you sure?" "I'm not, but I'm doing it anyway." Charmaine worked fast. Within 3 days, Darren and Shanice received legal papers stating they had 30 days to vacate the property. The notice was delivered by a process server who knocked on the door while they were eating dinner. I heard about it from Mrs. Patterson, who'd watched the whole thing unfold from her window. "Your son's face went white, and that wife of his, she started yelling at him right there on the porch. The whole block heard it." A small, petty part of me felt satisfaction, but mostly, I just felt sad. Darren called me that night. It was the first time I'd heard his voice since he threw me out. "Mom, what is this?" he demanded with anger. "You're evicting us?" "Yes," I said simply. "But where are we supposed to go?" The irony wasn't lost on me. "Wherever you want, Darren. You're resourceful. You'll figure it out." I used his own words against him, and the silence that followed was deafening. "This is ridiculous," Shanice's voice came through in the background. "She can't do this." "Actually, I can," I said calmly. "That house was never yours. It's mine, and I want it back." "Mom, please," Darren's voice cracked. "Can we talk about this?" "There's nothing to talk about. You made your decision when you threw me out. Now I'm making mine." I hung up before he could respond, my hands trembling, but my resolve solid. For the first time in weeks, I felt something other than grief. I felt power.
While all of this was happening, something else was unfolding that I hadn't told anyone about yet, not even Geraldine. About 4 years ago, 2 women from church, Sister Paulette and Sister Joyce, approached me with an idea. They wanted to start a small home cooking delivery service for people who were too busy or too tired to cook, but wanted real homemade meals. "Laverne, your mac and cheese is legendary," Paulette said. "And your peach cobbler? Girl, that's money sitting in your kitchen." I laughed it off at first. Who's going to pay for my cooking when they can get takeout? "People who are tired of eating garbage," Joyce said. "Trust me." We started small, real small. Just a few meals a week delivered to church members and their coworkers. I'd cook in my kitchen, pack everything in containers, and Paulette would deliver them on her way home from work. It barely made enough to cover ingredients at first, but slowly word spread. People started requesting specific dishes. Then their friends started ordering. Then their coworkers. Last year, Joyce's daughter, who's big on social media, posted a video of herself eating my collard greens and cornbread. The video went viral. Thousands of views, hundreds of comments asking where they could get the food. Suddenly, we had orders we couldn't keep up with. We hired 2 more women from church to help with cooking and delivery. We got contracts with 3 local offices to provide lunch twice a week. We even got approached by a small catering company wanting to partner with us. And last month, we officially became a registered LLC. Sister Paulette handled the paperwork, Sister Joyce managed the finances, and they made me the majority partner because most of the recipes were mine. "You deserve this, Laverne," Paulette said when we signed the papers. "You've given so much to everyone else. Let this be your season to receive." I didn't think much of it. I was just grateful to have something to do, something to pour myself into during those lonely evenings when Darren and Shanice were occupying my home. But 2 weeks after I moved out, right around the time the eviction notice was delivered, I got a call from our accountant. "Miss Laverne, I need you to sit down for this," he said. I sat down on Geraldine's couch, my heart racing.
What's wrong? Nothing's wrong. In fact, everything is right. Your business just cleared 6 figures for the quarter. I almost dropped the phone. What? 6 figures, he repeated. Between the office contracts, the catering partnership, and the individual orders, you ladies are pulling in serious revenue. And as majority partner, your share is substantial. He told me the exact number, and I had to ask him to repeat it 3 times because it didn't seem real. The woman my son called useless, the woman he threw out because my Social Security check wasn't enough, the woman they thought had nowhere to go and nothing to offer. I was sitting on a business that was making more money than Darren had ever seen in his life. I didn't tell him. I didn't tell anyone except Geraldine, who screamed so loud the neighbors probably thought someone was being attacked. God is so good, she shouted, hugging me tight. Laverne, do you understand what this means? I mean, I don't need him, I said quietly. It means I never needed him to take care of me. I can take care of myself. The first thing I did was open my own bank account, one Darren knew nothing about, and transferred my share of the business funds into it. The second thing I did was start looking at small apartments for rent, just in case getting my house back took longer than expected. But the third thing I did was the most important. I sent Darren a text message with a photo of my business license and a simple caption, God provides. He didn't respond, but I knew he saw it, and I knew it was eating him alive. Because the woman he discarded was thriving, and karma was just getting started.
Darren showed up at Geraldine's house on a Saturday afternoon, 2 weeks before his eviction deadline. I was sitting on the porch drinking sweet tea when I saw him walking up the street, his shoulders slumped, his face drawn. He looked like he'd aged 10 years in a month. Mom, he said, stopping at the bottom of the porch steps. Can we talk? I took a sip of my tea and didn't answer right away. Let him stand there. Let him feel uncomfortable. Where's Shanice? I finally asked. He looked away. She left. Left? Packed her things and moved in with her sister, said she didn't sign up for this mess. His voice was bitter. Said I was weak for letting you do this to us. I almost laughed. The woman who orchestrated my removal was now gone because things didn't go her way. Of course. So now you're here, I said flatly. Mom, I'm sorry. Tears filled his eyes. I was wrong. I know I was wrong. You threw me out with a trash bag, Darren. I know. You looked me in the eye and told me to go wherever I wanted like I was a stranger. I know, Mom. His voice cracked. Shanice got in my head. She kept saying we'd never have our own life if you were always there. She made me feel like you were the problem. So you blame her? I asked coldly. You're a grown man, Darren. You made a choice. I made a terrible choice, he admitted, tears streaming down his face now. I was selfish and cruel, and I don't know how to fix it. He climbed the steps and knelt in front of me, something he hadn't done since he was a little boy asking for forgiveness after breaking something. Please, Mom, please forgive me. I know I don't deserve it, but please. I looked down at my son, the child I carried, raised, protected, and sacrificed for, and felt my heart split in two. Part of me wanted to pull him into my arms and tell him everything would be okay. Part of me wanted to push him away and let him feel the full weight of what he'd done. Do you know what you took from me? I asked quietly. Not just the house. You took my dignity. You humiliated me in front of the whole neighborhood. You made me feel worthless. I'm so sorry, he sobbed. Sorry doesn't undo the damage, Darren. Sorry doesn't erase the nights I cried myself to sleep, wondering what I did wrong. I know, Mom, but I'm begging you. Let me come home. Let me make it right. I set my glass down and looked him directly in the eyes. No. His face crumbled. What? You can't come back. Not now. Maybe not ever. Mom, please. You need to learn something, Darren. You need to learn that people aren't disposable, that the ones who love you aren't supposed to be your safety net only when it's convenient for you. I understand that now, he pleaded. No, you don't. Not yet. Because if I let you back in right now, you won't learn anything. You'll think tears and apologies are enough to erase betrayal. And they're not. He stared at me devastated. So what am I supposed to do? Find your own way, like you told me to do. Build your own life, prove to yourself and to me that you can stand on your own without using people who love you as stepping stones. I don't have anywhere to go, he whispered. The irony hung heavy between us. You'll figure it out, I said, echoing his words once more. He stood slowly, defeated, broken. For a moment, I almost changed my mind, almost reached out to him. But I didn't. Because loving someone doesn't mean letting them destroy you over and over. I love you, Darren, I said as he turned to leave. I always will. But love has to come with respect. And until you understand that, we can't move forward. He nodded without looking back and walked away, his footsteps heavy on the pavement. Geraldine came out and sat beside me. That was one of the hardest things I've ever watched. It was one of the hardest things I've ever done, I admitted, wiping my eyes. But it was right, she said softly. Love sometimes looks like boundaries. I moved back into my house exactly 30 days later. Darren had left it clean, cleaner than I expected. No damage, no missing items, just an envelope on the kitchen counter with a handwritten note inside. Mom, I'm sorry. I hope one day you'll forgive me. I hope one day I'll deserve it. D. I folded the note and put it in my Bible, not because I was ready to forgive completely, but because I wanted to remember this season, the pain, the growth, the moment I chose myself. Charmaine helped me move my things back in. Geraldine brought over a pot of stew. Mrs. Patterson brought flowers for the porch, and my church family showed up with prayers, hugs, and enough casseroles to last a month. I stood in my living room, and felt peace settle over me like a warm blanket. This was my home, my sanctuary, and no one would ever take it from me again. My business continued growing. We hired 4 more women and moved our operation into a small commercial kitchen. The money wasn't just good, it was life-changing. I paid off my mortgage, I bought a new car. I even started a small scholarship fund for single mothers trying to go back to school. The woman my son thought was a burden became a blessing to dozens of families. 3 months later, Darren called, not to ask for anything, just to say he'd gotten a job and found a small apartment. He was working hard, going to therapy, trying to understand how he'd become someone he didn't recognize. I'm proud of you, I told him honestly. He don't deserve that, he said. Maybe not yet, but you're working toward it. That counts for something. We talk now, not often, but regularly. He's learning, growing, understanding the weight of what he did. And I'm healing, slowly but surely. I don't know if we'll ever get back what we lost. Maybe we will, maybe we won't. But I know this, I survived the worst betrayal of my life, and I came out stronger. Every evening, I sit on my porch, in my rocking chair, sipping sweet tea, watching the sunset over the neighborhood I refuse to leave. Sometimes I think about how close I came to losing everything. Sometimes I thank God for the people who held me together when I was falling apart. And sometimes I just smile, because the woman who was thrown away like trash is now living in victory. That's not revenge in the way people think of it, loud, angry, destructive. Real revenge is peace. It's success. It's refusing to let someone else's cruelty define your worth. Real revenge is healing while they're still figuring out what they lost. So let me leave you with this.
Respect the people who sacrificed for you. Honor the ones who held you up when you couldn't stand on your own. Because betraying the people you love doesn't just hurt them, it costs you pieces of yourself you'll spend years trying to get back. And if you've been betrayed the way I was, know this: your value isn't determined by how people treat you. It's determined by how you rise after they knock you down. I rose, and I'm still rising. Now, I want to hear from you. Do you think I did the right thing? Should I have let Darren back into the house immediately? What would you have done in my position? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Tell me your story if you've experienced something similar. Let's build a community where we support each other through the hard stuff. And if this story touched you, if it made you feel something, please hit that like button and subscribe to this channel. We share real stories from real people navigating family drama, betrayal, and the messy journey toward healing. Lastly, download your ebook titled Suspense and Thriller Stories by clicking the link in the pinned comment. Thank you for listening. Thank you for being here. And remember, you are never as powerless as people try to make you feel. God bless.